Let's now welcome Marion Edwards on stage. Marion, come.
Marion, on behalf of Variety Magazine, it's my great honor to present you with the very first Variety Vanguard Award here at MIPCOM 2016.
Thank you so much. I don't want to hurt it or myself.
Well, Marion, we're so glad that you're here and that you can share with us some of the wisdom that you've accumulated in these near 40 years in the business.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and I want to thank everyone who gave up some of their valuable MIPCOM business time to come here.
You've seen a lot of changes in these years that you've been in the business, and there have been various disruptors, whether it was cable television, and now we've got the digital space and players like Netflix, Amazon with their big war chests. And so for a traditional distributor, do you see this as a challenge of a different magnitude, and how do you think best to meet that challenge?
Well, I think actually, and I would just like to point out that I've been in the business about close to 40, if not slightly over 40 years, while managing to remain about 40. So I just want to be clear about that. I think the question is really, how do we best take advantage of all the opportunities that we now have? Before, the opportunities were to produce in the United States, but the opportunities were to produce for 3 different networks, and then to distribute to a very small number of public channels outside the United States. So we didn't have a lot of opportunity to become a really important business line, nor did we have an opportunity to make a ton of content. The opportunities we have now are almost too many in some ways, but certainly the advantage of that is that we're able to make the best content that we've ever made, I think, for television. And we're able to reach viewers and consumers around the world in ways we never dreamt possible in the early days of my career.
And you've seen how cyclical it's been, though, in terms of people's taste, how things come and go. We've had drama in years past, and then comedy seemed to be preeminent, and now we're talking about a flood of content in drama again, and a possible golden age. Do you really see it that way, that this is perhaps qualitatively different now, and is it really
again, these are, I have seen so many cycles over the course of 40 years, and, it began with, I can remember when, a single comedy, and I think it's still true today, a single really great comedy can give rise to comedy being on the upswing again. A single drama, I've heard drama's dead, and a really great drama will bring drama back in a big way. We have been kind of involved now for some time making these fantastic serialized dramas of, say, 10 to 13 episodes, and now our head of development is here with us, and they are really focused on procedural dramas again. So again, everything old is new again, and when people sort of feel like, okay, we've really explored that, now let's try to explore something else. I recall when suddenly scripted was over because unscripted was so popular.
Right.
So all of these things do have cycles, and I think the consumer right now is really the king because they are at the center of being served up great content across virtually every type.
But so much of it now. We've talked about this
Yes.
flood of programming that's out there, and I think we can even see it at MIPCOM, which has, I think, a record number of delegates this year who have come to the conference. And so, especially in the realm of drama, people have talked about perhaps we're going to have a subprime mortgage moment, where there's going to be a glut and people are going to go under. Do you see a danger of that at this point, or not really?
It's interesting. John Landgraf, who I really think is such a smart man, I really like him so much. And at one point he said, it's almost sometimes you feel like you're on board a ship and everyone's run to one side. And how long will it take for the boat to just roll over? what's happened so far is that the boat is still afloat, even though everyone is rushing kind of in to produce more and more dramas and comedies. We are ever more aware in the United States of the importance and the value of the international production community, where not only do some of our best shows come to us via format, but also we are directly competing for time slots with in the distribution business. So clearly, things will change. Things have continued to change. That is the one truth of I think the world we live in, not just entertainment. But we know in the entertainment industry that things have evolved quickly, and they will continue to evolve and change. The challenges and opportunities will come with that, and it is our job to find the opportunity in the challenge and not just the challenge in the challenge.
You mentioned formats and how that has become an increasingly important part of the business. Has that been true for you there at Fox as well, that formats really are beginning to reign because so many markets have matured around the world and are producing their own shows at this point?
Yes, certainly one of our biggest shows, Homeland, is based on a format, and we are constantly both in the business of taking our formats out into the world for local production, but also I know that there are people who really spend a great deal of their time looking at content being produced in other countries to bring back to the US. So
I think one of the questions that people have also though had about bringing content to the US, which is still obviously sort of the #1 market, is whether a foreign language drama at this point can earn big ratings, especially on free-to-air network television. Do you think the US is ready for that yet, or that's still some ways off? Because a lot of people here would want to know that.
I'm a proud American, but I'm not sure that Americans are ready to read their television. I think it's been a great shame that we did not include subtitled or dubbed programming in our catalog of viewership, but we were so focused on making all of our own stuff, so it's been more difficult for some content to make its way. I think English language obviously is welcomed, not everything, but much of it is, but it's still very difficult for a show that is in a foreign language. I myself am trying to work my way through the one on Netflix about the Narcos season 2. And you know, it's just a fact of life that I think many of us do other things while we watch television. But if you must read it, then you cannot do other things while you're watching. So I think it's a little less accessible to us because we don't have a history with it.
And do you think, though, that network TV is still kind of the holy grail for producers? Because there are so many platforms now that they can showcase their work, but is that still what everybody is going for?
You know, it still is a very, very, it's the brass ring, I think, for many, many producers. It depends on what kind of content they want to make to some degree, but I think that the fact that with a network hit, literally millions of people can watch it, and millions of people can engage in a community dialogue about it. And I still think that television, at its heart, is something that's best enjoyed together with other people. I think it's, you know, I mean, I can remember having Shogun parties, you know, back in the dark ages when, on nights when Shogun would air. I think a lot of people had friends parties and cheers parties. And it's just a great way to share fun and humor with your friends. And that's not so easy to do with shows where people are watching different numbers of episodes at different times and you're sort of binging on your own. And so I think that does keep that network experience special. And when you can hit it out of the ballpark there, you've hit a big home run.
It's interesting when you talk about the communal experience of television. I remember, just as you say, when you were an infant, selling the $6 Million Man. I was an infant watching it, and how great that was to share that the following day. But now that there are so many platforms, is there a danger, though, with the proliferation of content that can appeal to every niche, really, every sort of interest group, every kind of person, that there's a danger of things becoming very siloed and ghettoized, and so there isn't that conversation going, and we can even see the kind of polarization that's going on in the US right now with our very own presidential election. Is there a danger of that, you feel? Well,
I do think that the audience has fractured a lot, and I think it's great that there is programming being produced for virtually everybody who'd like to watch something. But I still think that there is that opportunity for shows to sort of reach across the aisle, to use the political analogy, that can attract parents and grandparents and children as well, that there are still family experiences to be had around the warm, glowing television set. But it's getting harder to do. And you're right, people tend to want to watch shows that speak very personally to them. But I think they're also still interested in broader shows and again, enjoying television. I mean, one of the reasons I think Fox has had such a successful run on their Sunday nights is they presented a different kind of family night. But Sunday night was a big, big night for television watching when I was growing up. I'm sure my parents wouldn't have allowed me to watch Family Guy, but it is still, for today's family, a great night of family viewing, and a lot of families still watch it together. And I think that's the power of network television.
And I think we also see how even those who are trying to make a name for themselves in other media, whether it's on YouTube or other platforms, are still hoping to make that leap.
They still hope to jump into that medium. And I think, I've been talking to people all week, as I talk to people all the time, but when you're at a market, you're talking to lots of people about lots of things. I said, I don't really think there's probably a more derogatory word in the English language than old. But old media is still the king, I think, of what people think of. And it is, again, grabbing that brass ring and making that connection to the audience that old media can give for you. So I think it's a bad word, but a great business.
When you think back, though, over your many years, can you identify a few shows that immediately leapt out to you, that something you knew was special about these, that either had your jaw dropping or your eyes growing like saucers because of what you've seen?
Oh my God, what a thrill this is going to be.
An epiphany moment.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I have watched a lot of television, and I know I'm kind of known both to my colleagues and coworkers as the television nut. I do love television. I think great television is so fun and so enjoyable. But I can remember the first time when I saw the pilot for Miami Vice, which, and I'm sure to all of you out there is like, really, Miami Vice? But there was nothing on television, anything remotely like that show. And you could just see that had jumped it with the use of music and very modern music and it was just such a cool show. And you had interesting leads, a multicultural cast, and I mean, it was terrific. And seeing that, we just knew we were going to have a lot of fun selling that. Kind of jumping forward to more current shows that more people will know. When we saw a show, 24 was a pilot that when we screened that, we all thought, oh my God, this is unique. I mean, this is not just different. This is really special and really unique. And I have to tell this story about Buffy because my friend Gail is here, and Gail was the producer of Buffy. And I can remember the first time they pitched that show to us, and my response was, who would make a show based on a bomb movie? And of course, the reality is that the show, everyone recognized that the movie did not live up to what Buffy the Vampire Slayer was, but the show certainly did. And it did become a passion project for me. So it was another show that combined so many new elements that we hadn't seen in TV before. X-Files is another show that we just felt from the very beginning like it was going to be something really special.
Buffy was one of the examples, as you say, that we saw on screen, and how tenaciously you tried to sell that. Yeah. Because your career has spanned many countries as well, what have you learned in terms of just sort of cultural dialogue and how to bring across things that could be extremely alien to other places, but still try to find a home for that?
Well, it's interesting because I think the one thing that when I talk about the shows that we have to people, I have such emotional connection to so many of the shows, and Buffy was just a great example of a show. People were very worried that it was too violent and yet too young, and they were worried about the time slot problems with that show. So it took a long time to convince people to watch more episodes because it also had such an extraordinary moral center and emotional connection to more than just a teenage audience. And it used its violence in a way to sort of enlarge the discussion rather than to shock or undermine the overall show. So it was, I think you when you talk to people about shows, I think they sense what you love or like or feel passionate about in that show. And that helps bridge the gap that may be, and then having said that, culturally, you'll never overcome certain things. certain things are just culturally unacceptable in other places, and you have to kind of live with that. But other times you can help people kind of understand the larger picture or watch enough episodes, and that's where the tenacity comes. No, please watch another episode.
Well, we certainly have heard of the successes that you've had around the world. Is there one that just kind of got away that you wish really had sold much more than it did, that you were quite passionate about? But
the
was
one that
hard
we
to bring
never
across?
could get, really. Oh, that's an interesting question. Because I think we really have had an amazing record of it being able to get the shows that really counted. But the ones, I have to say, sometimes there's the show that you loved as a pilot that didn't get picked up as a series. And we had one show called The Oaks, which we were very happy years later to take that pilot and together with the sort of short Bible that had been written for the show, and together with the ITV create a show, 2 seasons of 6 episodes each based on that format. So you never know where life can come from to breathe life again into a concept that you know is good and really solid. But it may not get made in the US, or it may go on the air in the US but not be successful for some reason or another. Yeah. But I think for the most part, we've had a pretty good track record to getting those. I mean, I was super sorry to see Murder One, which I thought was a fantastic, again, groundbreaking show. That audience just wasn't ready for a serialized drama of that length at the time that show came out. And that's a frustration you feel when you can't get an audience to get on the ride with you. We typically have been able to get broadcasters to give our shows a shot, but they can't force people to watch them. And sometimes your frustration is, oh my God, if we just could have gotten more people to come to it.
Before we let you go, I know that some people would like to hear, if they're starting their careers right now, per se in international distribution, what's a piece of advice that you would give them?
Oh gosh, don't give up. Keep going. You know, when you find something that you really love to do, whether it's in this business or any business, is just keep doing it. Because if you are tenacious, and sometimes that's just what it takes. And there have been moments in my life where I really wondered if I should perhaps seek a different path. Because not every day is a great day, although at the vantage point I have at this point, I can tell you way more of them were great days than not. But I do think that success is mostly about hard work, and so I just say keep doing it.
And what's next? Is it that pina colada that Jamie Lee Curtis talked about, or
no? But a really nice glass of wine.
Excellent. Well, for your years as in the Vanguard, making this business what it is, and for the accumulated wisdom that you've developed and have been generous enough to share with us today, I thank you, Marion Edwards.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks. Now, should we do that or take it?